I'm going to tell you what's on my mind this Shabbos. um, 78 years have passed since the Shoah. 78 years. Well, those of us who were not alive then, we could not comprehend how the Jews of the world sat silent and let it happen. Every time I hear about it, I just can't comprehend it. How did everybody just sit by and let it happen? This time, we are openly vocal because it appears that the world wants to let it happen again. Keep this thought in your head because we're going to return to it later. But before that, I want you to join me in imagining that you have just started your first job after graduating from college. All right? We graduate college or even high school, whatever, and we start our first job. You're in your first few months, but you know your boss, the person who hired you, is inept and doing a horrible job. There's just no doubt in your mind. You decide to send a letter to the editor of the local paper explaining what a failure and loser your boss is. You describe his failures as you see them, and you condemn him for his actions publicly. Of course, since you have all the courage of your convictions to expose this person's horrible management ability, you make sure that your report to the local paper will be published anonymously. To your surprise, someone leaks your name and your cloak of anonymity is now removed. Within minutes, everyone in the entire community knows what you did. Can I ask you a question? Do you think that the next morning when you go back to work, you will be welcomed as a conquering hero? Of course not. Anything but. You will more likely be viewed as a pariah and will be permanently escorted out of the building so that you could look for another job. You don't work there anymore. In my day, if I had done anything like that, I would have been out so fast, I would not have known what hit me. Furthermore, not one person would have sympathized with me, not one. So as for me, when I started my first job right out of college, I had a few disagreements with my boss. This is a very normal thing to happen. However, I kept it between us, not public. I didn't put it in the paper. I just talked to him about it. Not only that, but many times I kept my mouth zipped shut. When we did discuss our disagreements, I always approached it respectfully. Most of the time, my boss explained the situation to me. Without that explanation, I just thought my boss was an idiot. But after hearing the reasons for doing it that way, I found out that the idiot was me. That is such an important lesson to learn. The point is, we are always entitled to our opinion, but we are never entitled to contextually incorrect facts. We have to have facts that are real and in context. We are also not allowed to decide the consequences of our actions. It's not our decision. When we do something wrong, somebody else decides, not us. Opinions and facts are not equal. They're not equal at all. Opinions and facts are not equal. Opinions must be derived from facts and context. And if they're not, they're just opinions. Everybody has one. Like a nose, everybody's got one. A couple of weeks ago, there was something reported in the November 13th edition of the New York Slimes that went viral. It described actions by young congressional aides in DC. Maybe you saw it. I'm going to read it. It's not that long. The carnations arrived by the wheelbarrow, blood red, pink, orange, and yellow, More than 10,000 stems were laid out on the steps at the base of the Capitol against the clear blue sky. Each was meant to represent a civilian life lost in the Israeli-Hamas war 1 month in, encompassing Israeli and Palestinian people alike. They were placed there by more than 100 congressional staff members, all wearing masks to obscure their identities. They called a walkout honoring the civilians killed in the conflict and calling for a ceasefire and the release of more than 240 hostages abducted by Hamas. We are congressional staffers on Capitol Hill, and we are no longer comfortable staying silent. 3 of the aides, all of whom declined to give their names, declared the Capitol Dome, declared in front of the Capitol Dome, which was towering behind them. Our constituents are pleading for a ceasefire, and we are the staffers answering their calls. Most of our bosses on Capitol Hill do not listen to the people they represent. We demand our leaders speak up, call for a ceasefire, a release of all hostages, and an immediate de-escalation now. When I got to that part, I have to admit, started to yell out loud. You demand? Who the hell do you think you are? You're in your 20s. You have a job on Capitol Hill as an aide to a U.S. congressperson, and you have demands? When were you elected to anything? Times continued. The walkout was the latest in a series of actions congressional aides have taken, almost all of them anonymously, to publicly urge members of Congress, their own bosses, to call for a ceasefire in Gaza. The many have concluded that they have no choice but to speak out, albeit without using their names, in a remarkably open break from the cardinal Capitol Hill rule that holds that aides should never come out and publicly contradict their bosses. They need to stay in the background. And that's what the New York Times said. At least they had the courage of their convictions to stand up for their values, right? Actually, no. These kids were nothing but self-aggrandizing cowards, acting on their feelings while hiding behind their anonymity. The New York Times then continues. According to interviews with more than a dozen aides and strategists, most of whom spoke only on the condition of their names not being used for fear of imperiling their jobs and prompting personal attacks. All right, so now you violate the rules of staying in the background and protecting your boss at the same time, and you do not have the guts to stand up for your opinions and take the consequences that you are due. You are due consequences. I can tell you this much. I know everybody here will agree that these clowns would never be qualified for a JFK Profile and Courage Award. There was no courage hiding behind anonymity. So how did things change so much that this could ever happen? It wouldn't happen 10 years ago. What happened? Honestly, it is not surprising at all. Consider how they were raised. This also explains the generation right behind them, who are now in college and protesting in favor of Hamas. Listen to them speak. They have a difficult time saying even one sentence without the word I or me in it. They talk and they say, I feel, I'm this, I'm that, me, I. It's hard to listen. Somewhere in every paragraph are the words I feel. Yes, these folks have been taught to believe that they are special. They were raised by parents who taught them that their feelings and opinions override everything else. They were raised to believe their feelings and opinions should not be confused with the facts. to reject critical thinking was exactly how they were raised. I'm not talking about white privilege because this applies to almost every single person who is matriculating through the school. These poor souls were told by their parents that they were special. Why? What made them special? This is the unsolved mystery of our time. I have no idea. And when they were kids in Little League, they played not for a championship trophy, but for the same participation award that everyone else got. Not excelling, but participating was all that mattered. Winning was unimportant because losing might hurt their precious feelings, and God forbid, that would be a shanda. When they had a problem or conflict in school, their parents would defend them. It was somehow always someone else's fault, but never their special child. Never. Standards were lowered and meritocracy was shunned so as not to hurt anyone's feelings. They were taught that their opinions mattered just because it was their feelings. Well-argued analytical thinking was not as important as validating feelings. When these children went to college, it became the college's responsibility to protect them from disagreements or any challenges that would make them think, and in doing so, would cause them any kind of discomfort. I know we all have heard of Bill Maher. Some of us like him, some of us don't like him. It doesn't matter. But he did say something that was really, really truthful that we can all agree with. He was talking about how edgy comedians no longer can do stand up at universities. If they have a point of view, they can't do it because the students would complain afterwards about how upset they felt at the event. Feelings. Satire and criticism by comedians upset the students' feelings. Groucho, Rickles, Archie Bunker, Carlin, and the like would never make it on today's campuses. Never. In ancient times, when I was in college, feels like ancient times, it was a time of political debate. Speakers and professors' views disturbed all of us by design. They purposely tried to disturb us with what they said. I engaged them in debate. I didn't run to some safe room somewhere. There weren't any. Nobody had ever heard of such a thing. No matter how painful it was to defend my position, I could disagree with faculty and then later have a cup of coffee with them and continue the discussion. Nobody thought to censor or cancel speech. That was never in anybody's head. Forget about it. I was not worried about them lowering my grades because they couldn't get any lower. So we were encouraged to debate as long as we used facts and critical thinking. Saying the words, "I feel that," those words were off the table. We couldn't use them. We were there to learn how to think. And the better we got at it, the better we could take them on. That was what colleges and universities were created to do in the first place. So what changed? Two words. Two words. Social media. As soon as students do not like something the university is or is not doing, they pour out their feelings on social media. No facts, just feelings. Even for students who are not that well known, they can easily get thousands of likes for posting that my professor is a fascist sympathizer for Israel's genocide over the Palestinian people. They post it. They get thousands and thousands of likes. The post offers no facts, no proof, no critical thinking at all, only feelings and opinions. Baseless feelings and opinions. If a video happens to go with it, the post goes viral. And what's weird is most of the videos disprove what they're saying. It still goes viral. And the poster's opinion is viewed as being supported by those videos. You know what? The world is upside down. Upside down. What's right is left, what's left is right, what's up is down, what's down is up, what's front is back, what's back is front. Many students are naming the presidents of their schools as being supporters of Jews in Israel. No president wants thousands of views or for it to go viral, becoming millions of views. That is why those presidents would not say that what Hamas did was evil. They didn't say it. They also didn't say that genocide was a bad thing. How can you not say that? The role of a university president is to make the school profitable and raise money. That's their job. They're not considered the best teachers or the best professors. In fact, some of them aren't. They're there to raise money and make the school profitable. So if they aren't careful, new student applications will go down and affect their job performance and their contract. The board might call them to the woodshed. This is what is going on at Penn right now after a donor took back a $100 million contribution. Can you believe it? A $100 million contribution was taken back. Recently, the Oakland City Council, a couple of weeks ago, passed a carefully crafted resolution calling for a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war after hearing impassioned rhetoric that went on for hours. It focused on the deaths of thousands of civilians in Gaza, ignoring what Gaza did to Israeli civilians. Furthermore, not one person challenged the body count that was released by Hamas. Not one person. We talked about that last week. So let me not forget to tell you that before the vote on the main item was taken, the council voted 6-2 to reject proposed amendments that specifically condemned the killings and hostage taking that was bragged about in social media by Hamas. The harshest language was used by the Jewish anti-Zionist activists. Can you believe this? They were the worst. They passionately argued for passage of the measure. These disgraceful Jews called upon the debunked lies that Israel colonized Palestine and was committing apartheid and ethnic cleansing. The Jews were saying this. These poor excuses for human beings, let alone Jews, learn to cherish their feelings and opinions over facts and critical thinking. If things do not change, another Shoah is definitely coming right around the corner. And don't think that I'm using hyperbole. I'm not. Okay, now we're going to close this by going back to something from earlier. Knowing this, the members of Congress are standing firm that Hamas must be eliminated no matter the cost. They know that their spoiled brat aides are naive and wrong. Congress knows that the Jews of Israel are first, then the rest of the Jews, and eventually all of Europe and America and the rest of the world. I have a question. When were these folks ever different? With that, I want to wish you all a Shabbat Shalom and a Chag Sameach for Hanukkah.